BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Daily Podcast. It's Thursday the 12th of December and it's still cold. And a familiar face is back in town.
When I was up here, particularly in my first year, they made the Europa League final, so I've got a pretty clear idea of how challenging it is to play them here in front of that crowd and the atmosphere. But at the same time, exciting. You're looking forward to good games, and I'm sure the players are as well.
Can Rangers produce another European night to remember against Ange Postecoglou's Spurs? Also,
ball at the back post, Shankland with a header. He scored! At last, Lawrence Shankland!
With Lawrence Shankland back among the goals, can Hearts cause an upset in Copenhagen? And
ball whipped over, there's the header from Redondo, and it's out of reach for Kelsey Doherty, and Real Madrid do have a third.
Brief reaction to Celtic's 3-0 defeat to Real Madrid in the Women's Champions League last night.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Great to have you along as ever. My goodness, another busy day of football. It's relentless at the moment. I'm joined by Rory Loy, former Rangers, Carlisle, Falkirk, Dundee forward. Rory, morning to you.
Morning, Phil.
Christmas has come early given how much football we have this week.
Yes, it has. And thoroughly looking forward to it all. It's coming towards that time of year where it's just game after game after game. And I think everyone, I loved it when I played, and I love it now that I'm involved in this side of it as well.
I've named your former clubs. Let's bring in Moira Gordon, football journalist. Moira, let's name your former papers.
Basically, Southern Reporter, Scotsman, Scotland on Sunday, and now Jack of all trades, and pick up a paper and you might find me.
Can we call you a journeyman journalist, or is it a journeyman journalist without the men or the woman, Moira?
I think we can just say I'll do what I need to do to pay the mortgage and enjoy football.
Good. Well, listen, I've got a battle coming up a little later in the pod because I want to decide who is the more intelligent when it comes to football history. Is it somebody who played the game or somebody? What was that, Rory?
Just said, geez, Test this morning, Phil.
I've already told you that once I cover a game on a Saturday, by the Monday, I've probably forgotten what the score was, so this could be tricky.
Listen, Moira, as somebody who sits on one side of the fence with you, I will do everything in my power and probably even give you the answers to beat the former professional player. So we'll come to that in just a moment. Listen, lots to discuss. Tonight, though, we're looking ahead to Rangers at home to Spurs. Hearts away to Copenhagen. It's certainly material to whet the appetite. Before, though, I want to just look back to last night's game. Moira, another defeat for Celtic in the Women's Champions League. That's now 5 on the spin. 3-0 against Real Madrid. As always this season, though, the sort of the health warning has to be that we all have to remember that this is Celtic's first appearance at this level of competition.
That's right, it's Scottish football's first appearance at this level, for the women's game. So, as you say, there has to be a caveat that goes with it, that this is definitely a learning process still for Celtic and for Scottish football. We haven't been used to playing in that stage. This is quality opposition every single time they're playing these games. So there are definitely positives to be taken out of each of the games, but it's something that is definitely part of a learning process, and we can't celebrate the results as such, but we can actually benefit from the education it's given the team and the players, and that will only help Celtic going forward, and it will help the Scottish football and Scottish international players that are involved, produce more going forward, hopefully, as well.
Rory, when you're continuously being beaten, whether it's at age grade football or whether it's up in the top tier, we always hear that this is character building and that you can improve, but at some stage it must get pretty demoralising to trot out and to come off the pitch after a heavy defeat.
Yeah, listen, if you're on a bad run of form, it can become difficult, and it's when it becomes psychological, and you can't get past that barrier of believing you can win. That's when it becomes a problem, I think. And sometimes you just need to scrape a horrible 1-0 win whether it goes in off somebody's backside and you win 1-0, or you just get over the line. It can instill belief, but as Moira says, it's difficult at that level of football as well, because not only do you need to win back that belief mentally, you've got to try and overcome the best opposition there is, and that combination can be quite difficult to overcome. So, look, their first appearance in the Champions League, and that'll set them up well for the future.
Yeah, and it's a final game away to FC 20 for Celtic next week on Tuesday night it is, to round off their Champions League group campaign. FC 20 hammered by Chelsea last night. It's a game that you'll be able to hear live on SportsSun. Talking of live action on SportsSound, let's focus on tonight. We've got Hearts and Copenhagen at 5:45. We'll speak about that in a moment. Firstly, a so-called Battle of Britain under the lights at Ibrox. It's a term that's almost fallen out of favour, not least because there's really been no battle in recent years, because the English sides, whoever they're up against, always seem to win and win well. I just wonder, Rory, from a Rangers European perspective, will tonight feel any differently given, forget that it's Ange Postecoglou returning, but will it feel any differently given that it's Spurs, that it's a British side?
I don't think the fact that it's a British side will make any difference to the game. I do think they are a cut above Tottenham. You look at the Lyon game, Lyon were very good. I think Spurs are better than Lyon, personally. And yes, they've got their weaknesses. They can be exposed at the back, but it's teams such as English Premier League teams who are exposing them at the back at times, like Chelsea, who are a top side at the moment. Have Rangers got enough to go and get a result, to do something? There's so many caveats to this game with the return of Ange Postecoglou. I think people will underestimate Spurs slightly because they're on a bit of a poor run, and the fact that Rangers do play their best football on a Thursday night. However, I think Spurs have far too much quality.
Moira, it's a really interesting run of form that Rangers are on. I mean, I think I did the podcast the morning after Aberdeen beat Rangers, and the back pages were just clamouring for Clement, it seemed at that point. Since then, they're undefeated in 8 games, and they've solidified things at the back that it almost looks like a Rangers side that can maybe be on the ropes, can take a punch or two from opposition, but always end up running out on top.
Absolutely. I mean, there's still fragility there. I think there's something that I agree with Rory. I think when you come up against better quality opposition, it might be something that, you start seeing the cracks appear slightly again. But they'll have greater confidence going into this than they would have done, as you say, back at that spell in the season where things weren't going right for them. The fans were on their back. The other good thing is the fans will absolutely be behind them and will be on top of Spurs, and especially on top of Ange. So they'll create an atmosphere that will be a positive one, I would think, for Rangers to play in front of tonight. So that'll help as well. But I think they've found a bit more stability there. They have found their foot slightly, but I do think when you're coming up against quality players that play week in, week out in the Premier League downside, and let's be honest about it, can beat a Man City's team. And I know that there's a few teams have done, or more teams have done that this season than previous, but you're not mugs when you're going out and you're beating a team like that. So they have it within their squad and their team to have players there that can produce quality. That it's about whether Rangers can stay with it in those tight spells where, Spurs are coming at them. If they can keep their cool at that point, stay organised, then and keep the game, goalless, or not allow Spurs to score early doors, then, they'll have a bit more going for them. But I think the idea going out there and thinking this is the Spurs side that is wounded and helpless, I think is, I think that's a falsehood. I think they're going to come and produce some quality.
I think as well, Phil, normally, it's the old line from a manager, we're just concentrating on the next game. And of course, if you ask Clement and the players, that'd be the case. I think Sunday's season defining. I think I really do. And I know
the League Cup final.
I do, Phil. I really do. I think Clermont, the last 8 games you speak of, Clermont has managed to, delay what some people thought was the inevitable, of them leaving the club at some point. I think if he can win on Sunday, avoid a heavy defeat tonight and win on Sunday, then he gives himself a real opportunity to stay on as Rangers manager. However, I think if he loses on Sunday, it very quickly goes back to 8 games ago, and people are clamouring to get him out the door.
So this is not just season defining for you as a former Rangers player, but this will define Philippe Clement's future, because of course the new chief executive, Patrick Stewart at Ibrox, he starts the Monday morning after the League Cup final.
Well, I mean, when I say it's season defining, I mean the league's gone. Rangers are not going to win the league. If they don't win on Sunday, they've lost the League Cup. They're not going to win the Europa League. So yeah, I mean, all left at that point would be the Scottish Cup. I mean, it's season defining for Clement, the manager. In my opinion, I think he's came to a crossroads where he's done enough in the last 8 games for people to go, right, okay, let's see what happens on Sunday. And team selection is huge. I wouldn't play James Tavernier on Sunday. I would play him tonight. I would not play him on Sunday. So I think his team selection tonight and on Sunday could make or break him.
We all like a conspiracy theory, but we all like to see from a media point of view who the clubs put up in their pre-match press conferences, because it sort of gives you an indication whether they'll play tomorrow night. James Tavernier up front and centre yesterday. Would that indicate that actually Clement will play the Rangers captain tonight?
I think there's a higher suggestion of it, as you say, normally, but it's not always the case. I mean, again, if they want to play a bit of cat and mouse, then they'll sometimes put somebody up and then you'll find them on the bench when the game's kicking off. But majority of the time, you'll find the person who's put up for the media during the pre-match will be the one that's starting. And as Rory says, it makes sense. It makes sense for this team selection for him to be in it. But especially, his attacking abilities, they're going to be key as well, because it might be a case of who scores most tonight, it's rather than actually, which defence is going to be head top. So it might be a sensible one to play him. And as Rory says, looking ahead to the weekend, that is the one that's kind of key for them. They're in a decent enough place in Europe just now that they could, lose tonight and still get the, not be, as long as not a heavy defeat, still take that into the weekend, and that would be get the silverware would be their thinking into the cabinet, and then focus on getting Europe tied up in next week. So there's still options.
Rory, just on this and just finally on this particular matter, do you think that Philippe Clement's side tonight that he puts out against Spurs will be one eye on Sunday?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I think it has to be. I mean, the problem with tonight is you're not playing a side. You are playing a side who has the potential to score a lot of goals. They've done it against top sides in England. So I think ahead of Sunday he will want to put out I don't want to say a weakened team, but a team which looks after Sunday in terms of who he can pick on Sunday. But I think in the back of his head he's going, if I pick the wrong team here, we could be taken for 4 or 5. I do agree with Moira. It's going to be an open game. I just think Spurs will have too much. I think somewhere in Philippe Clement's inner thoughts, he may be thinking, right, pick a side that's going to be competitive, not necessarily expect to win the game, and all eyes on Sunday. I really do. I think I don't think tonight has as much importance or anywhere near as importance, but what he doesn't want to do is bring any unwanted negative attention ahead of Sunday.
Yeah. Just finally, before we head to Copenhagen, Moira, great fare for you and the rest of the journos when it comes to the returning former Celtic manager to face things at Ibrox. Does Ange Postecoglou's return with a Spurs side make any difference at all once the whistle goes?
I think it'll make a difference to the atmosphere. I do think that's something that'll be factored in. And also I think it'll, for all Ange's, a strong character and everything that's going on there, he'll not want to come back knowing the run that they're on at the moment, the pressure he's under for his job as well. I mean, this is 2 managers that are being looked at closely at the moment. So he's under a bit of pressure there as well. So he'll not want to come back and slip up, because English football, again, still considers Scotland or, we're the inferior neighbour, as it were. So he doesn't want to come and lose there, because Spurs fans won't accept that either. And for all the Man City result we talked about there was a great one, the rest of their domestic form isn't great. European form, they're struggling as well slightly. So they're not hit the heights that they wanted to hit, or that they maybe promised then during Ange's first season. So he's under pressure. And I think the atmosphere, and I think Rangers fans know that, and that'll make a difference tonight.
Yeah, you speak about the Man City game that Spurs won 4-0. That's their only win in their last 7. So yes, you're right to say that Ange Postecoglou under a bit of pressure with Spurs. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. It's live with us on BBC Radio Scotland. Before that, though, Sports Sound will be in Copenhagen, where Hearts are there in the Europa Conference. The illustrious home side, of course, as far as Scandinavian football is concerned. To fill us in on their forum, we've been speaking to journalist and podcast host Sebastian Stanbury.
I think overall, when you look at the first half of the season, the opinion is that FC Copenhagen had not been performing that well. They have not really been dominating the matches as maybe we would have expected, considering they are the biggest side in Denmark, the most expensive. They have the most expensive squad in Denmark. They have made some very grave errors defensively, and they haven't really got all their attacking players clicking at all cylinders at all times. But we've just gone on winter break here in Denmark. They were number 1 in the league. They are very close to the cup semifinals, having won the first of 2 quarterfinals away from home, 3-1. And they are looking at the moment to progress in the Conference League at the moment. So it hasn't been a perfect first half of the season for FC Copenhagen, but it says a lot about FC Copenhagen that they're still doing very well. They want to dominate on the ball. There are sides here in Denmark that are better doing that, but that is the idea, that they want to dominate on the ball. But the feeling here in Denmark is that they could be even better at doing that. They should be even better than that, seeing how much money they pour into the squad. That said, they had very many players who are able to decide a game. So Mohamed El Yunusi, as you remember from Celtic, maybe.
Celtic and forward again down the left with Edouard. Left of the box, gets the early cross in, there's a header, and there's a goal for Celtic. Scored by Mohamed El Yunusi with a diving header. Really good play down the left from Edouard, and El Yunusi scores.
He was named the best player of the fall in the Danish Super League. A big honor for him. And that's because he's not always the player who takes the game by the scruff of the neck and dictates it, but he very often decides it. And they have a couple of players like that. Victor Claesson can do it. Andreas Cornelius on a good day can do it. Thomas Delaney, the former national player of Denmark, can do it. So they have players who are able to decide a game, and that's very important for them, has been very important for them. I think the feeling here in Denmark is that this is a match that FC Copenhagen should win against an opponent of the quality of Hearts. No disrespect to Hearts, but I think the feeling is that FC Copenhagen should be able to win a match like this. The problem for FC Copenhagen is that they have had 2 matches like that already at home in the Conference League, and they have won neither. They lost 2-1 to Bialystok with a very late goal, and then they only got 2-2 against Istanbul Basaksehir here with grave defensive errors in that match. So they should win it, but they haven't proven this far in the Conference League that they have been able to win those type of matches at home.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Moira, how will Hearts be feeling going into this one? I was checking the table. There's just a point between Hearts and Copenhagen. I mean, the table in European football this season, you might as well not look at the table until 5 minutes before the full time in the very last group games. But actually, in the table, they look matched. Hearing Neil Critchley, though, in his press match comments yesterday, he was speaking about just the gulf inside and how Copenhagen are a class apart from any team Hearts have played in Europe this season.
Yeah, I think, again, we've been talking about the form with Rangers and Spurs, and you look at Copenhagen's form, and they're a team that, I think the last defeat was in the very first match day of the European group stages, so they've gone, I think, 12 games unbeaten, which is impressive in any level or any league. But the one thing we would say, and Neil knows that they are going to be, he's talked about them being the best team they've come up against in the group. He likens them to going up against Celtic and Rangers in terms of the quality of the heights that Hearts are going to have to reach. But Copenhagen, for all their undefeated run, they're actually 6 of the last 12, and 6 of that unbeaten run are actually draws, which is, if Hearts were to get a dub tonight, they wouldn't, be too upset, and that would pretty much guarantee them European football ongoing. So it was interesting because Neil was also asked if this was considered a free hit then, and he absolutely denied that, said, no, you can't go in any game. We still believe we can get something out of this. He didn't say necessarily we're going to go and win it and it was all gone blazing, but he believes that they've got an ability to go and do that. I think it'll be a tough ask, especially when you look at, Ben Beningham's going to be missing, and he's been outstanding for them this season. Musa isn't going to be available he's not registered for this stage of European football, so that takes another attacking threat away from Hearts, and he has been useful for them in the last couple of games. So I think that'll be it'll make it really tricky for them. But I'm a firm believer, no game's not there for the takings. So you can go out and try, but I think he's correct in his assessment. I think it will be the toughest ask yet for them in Europe.
Rory, as a former striker, would you put your Christmas stocking on Lawrence Shankland scoring tonight, given that his first goals in 3, 4, 5 decades, it feels. Last weekend he banged a couple in. He seemed to be, and I loved this reaction when he scored last weekend, you could almost sense the relief and the pressure just coming off his shoulders, which would make him a dangerous weapon tonight for Hearts in Copenhagen.
Yeah, but he needs to get opportunities. He needs to get chances. And, you can't score if... I was going to say you can't score if you've not got the ball in the opposition's box or the opposition's half. However, I think he scored from the halfway line before. So, no, look, as a striker, if you go one game without a goal, you come off and, it doesn't matter how well you've played within the game. You always want to score a goal. So for such a prolific scorer who... his whole reputation's built on his goal scoring. Yes, he has added more things to his game, but he will always be known for his goal scoring. To go that amount of games without scoring is not good. It happens to the best of us, but he's managed to get back on the score sheet. It's just whether he can get the ammunition to actually get close enough to the goals tonight. I don't think it'll be as dramatic as that. I think Hearts will be able to get up the pitch and create chances. What I will say is this fixture, it's better to have this fixture now than for this to be the first or the second away game in Europe when the team, a lot of players haven't experienced European football before, especially playing clubs like Copenhagen. But they've now had a little taste of it. They'll have learned lessons from Cercle Bruges where, yes, Shankland misses the penalty, but they were competitive in that game. They've been competitive in all the games. So I think going into Copenhagen, after the weekend as well, they're probably in as good a place as they can be. And I think they'll be going in the game with approaching this game with a positive attitude, thinking, you know what, let's go and enjoy it and see what it takes us, because they've got good players. And what they have, Phil, is they have players in Shankland and Spittle and others as well, Danda, who can produce a moment where gets them a goal out of nothing. We've not seen it enough this season, but if they can produce it tonight and they can keep solid at the back, I don't see any reason why they can't go and bring a point back.
5:45 for this one. Hearts in Copenhagen. The best advice I can give you, just stick on Sports Sound at 5 o'clock. We'll take you right the way through both Hearts and Rangers in action tonight. Before we go, let's get to the quiz. Now, the reason I didn't pose you the question at the start is because, and listen, you're both impeccable characters, so I wouldn't think you would cheat. But the temptation to jump onto a search engine might have been too much. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds to come up with 5 players who have played for both Rangers and Tottenham. And there is a special prize for one particular player. This is called the Alan Hutton somebody has penned Rangers Spurs as the Alan Hutton Derby. And I have to say, Alan Hutton must have been, I think,
Phil, that's the only one I've got, and you've ruined it.
I was going to say Alan Hutton's about the 4th player I thought of. You crack away. You've got 60 seconds, and I can see you both in the camera, so I will see if you're searching on anything. So just have a think for yourself. While you're having a think, let me just remind you, tonight, 5 o'clock, Kenny McIntyre and the Sports Hunt team on air. That's online, on digital, and on your smartphone. BBC Radio Scotland. They have Hearts Copenhagen at 5:45. After that, we then switch the attention from the Europa Conference to the Europa League with Rangers against Tottenham, the so-called Alan Hutton derby. 8 o'clock tonight. Sports Sound won't miss a thing. Right, 60 seconds are up. I need 5 players from you. Rory, hit me with one.
Well, Alan Hutton we've got.
No, I'm not taking Alan Hutton because I've given you that. So I want 5 players.
Gordon Jury.
Well done. That's one. Moira.
I'm out. Honestly, I'm trying to even think. I knew it was an extensive list, but my mind has gone completely.
Moira, you're out.
At the moment, go back. I've missed my first penalty, so back over and ready.
Rory, give me a second.
Colin Calderwood didn't play for Rangers, did he?
No. Richard Gough.
Richard Gough, of course.
Paul Gascoigne.
Oh, Paul Gascoigne, of course. That was an obvious one that we should have got.
Pedro Mendes.
Oh, of course. I played with Pedro Mendes.
What? Jermaine Defoe.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Nico Kranjčar.
Of course.
Graham Roberts. Here's one that will hit you, probably by surprise. Graham Souness. He played 1 game for Spurs back in 1971 as a substitute.
That's knowledge there, Phil. Well done.
Well, I can but only say thank you, yes. It also shows you what an advantage you have when the producer has given you a sheet with a list of names on it. Although, to be fair, Jermaine Defoe, Richard Gough, Paul Gascoigne, I had that. Alan Hutton, as I say, was the 4th one. The Graham Souness one I thought was brilliant. And if you,
I was the master of the scrappy 1-0 win there.
I thought, considering you played with Pedro Mendes and you didn't get that one, Rory, I'm going to take one of your answers off. So I think it's a 0-0 draw between the two of you. Listen, I'm sorry, that was naughty of me to throw that on you, but it just shows you that knowledge is power. And when it comes to knowledge, Rory and Moira are very good at their jobs, but maybe not so good at Rangers Spurs history. Rory and Moira, thank you very much indeed. My goodness, it's a busy night ahead, and you will hear it all on Sports Sound. Remember, BBC Radio Scotland, 5 o'clock for Hearts and Rangers in Europe. Scottish Football Daily podcast every day with you at BBC Sounds. Also check on your notifications and it will drop on your phone when it goes live at BBC Sounds. I'm Phil Goodlad. Enjoy the beautiful game ahead, and we'll speak again soon.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer. But then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.